Red button means we're live, a casual take with your boy Stephen Pepper, here to give a take off my chest. So last night was the first ever college football playoff game in the new 12-team format, and it went as I expected. Indiana gets destroyed, and Notre Dame. Don't look at the score. I know it says 27-17, but Indiana was down 27-3 with a minute 30 left to go. And my takeaway from last night is just because you're a good story doesn't necessarily mean you're a good team. Curt Cignetti bringing Indiana their first double-digit win season is awesome, but they weren't a playoff team, and real ball knowers saw last night's outcome coming from a mile away. But since people wanted to expand to 12, you have this Indiana team who won X amount of Big Ten games, emphasis on the air quotes, and teams like Alabama, Ole Miss, Miami lost too many games. So here's Indiana with a seat at the grown-up table. But when you sit at the adult table, you have to know how to eat properly, or you're going to embarrass yourself. And Indiana, in the only two games they played against ranked teams, Ohio State and Notre Dame, they got outscored 65-32. Oh, and again, if you just take away that 14-point stat pad in the last minute 30 last night, it's a 47-point difference now. I mean, that's varsity versus JV stuff. Listen, I understand Indiana's best argument that at least they blew out their poor competition. But listen, JV can crush the freshman team, but varsity's a different beast. Ohio State, Notre Dame, those are varsity teams. They don't have a JV state championship for a reason, because you have no shot at the national title. And this was always my fear of expansion, because when you go to 12, you start running the risk for teams like in Indiana to get in who have a negative shot of not just winning the title, but at winning just one game. Indiana did nothing all season to prove that they could win one playoff game against a team like a Notre Dame or a Penn State or a Texas, because look at their schedule. Now, I'm not going to dog them entirely for their schedule, because you play who's ahead of you, and they did schedule teams like Michigan and Washington who were in the national championship game last January. But I mean, their strength of schedule, their opponent combined record was 51-81. I mean, come on, I'm looking 4-8 Maryland, 4-8 Northwestern, 1-11 Purdue. None of this is impressive. When your best wins are a 7-5 Michigan and a 6-6 Nebraska, how do I expect you to go to the playoffs and compete at a high level? And, this is why I never always bought into the game, like the season stats in college football. Oh, look at this, we're best in this. They showed a lot during last night's game of Indiana's point differential, points per game, yards. All of that is determined by your competition. And when you're 400 yards a game, you're best in point differential, and you're best in points per game, and then you only put up 278 yards in South Bend. And again, that's with the stat pad at the end of the game. You lose by 10 points when you're supposed to be like this 20-point differential team. None of your stats showed up in Columbus, and none of your stats showed up in Notre Dame, because this team was a fraud. But maybe no one was a bigger fraud than their coach, Curt Cignetti, who, again, I like Curt Cignetti. I think what he did in Indiana was an all-time story. This is the most losing, program in FBS history. And he took them to an 11-win team in year one. I love that. But this guy talked a big game before Ohio State, got destroyed. Talked a big game before Notre Dame, got destroyed. Then this guy talks a bunch of big games, and then I'm watching him last night. He's throwing in the towel with 10 minutes to go. He's punting on fourth downs, kicking field goals instead of going for it in the red zone, conservative game plans. He's all bark, no bite. And again, I understand why Indiana got in. They had to get in. They were an 11-win Big Ten team, and they didn't want to set a precedent of putting a 3-loss SEC team like Bama and Ole Miss, who play with their food all season, over them, because things could get real ugly and real ugly fast. And they did blow out their opponents. But again, we knew they were frauds all along. They played one good team all season and got destroyed. How am I supposed to expect them to go in the playoffs and win a game, or at least keep it close? Yeah, they blew up their opponents, but, the JV team can crush the freshmen. But as soon as they line up across the field with the varsity, it's a whole different world. They don't belong. And real ball knowers, people cross throughout the season tried to convince us that Indiana was this real team and rightfully so deserves their place. But real ball knowers knew this was going to happen. So it's going to be interesting to see what the college football playoff does with another Indiana team in the future. But I appreciate everyone for tuning into this episode of A Casual Take. Follow my social medias to stay updated on all things related to the show. Till next time, see ya.